There are moments in life when the air feels charged with something unseen, something divine, something unexplainable. You sense it in your spirit before you ever see it in your circumstances. You feel the shift, the quiet stirring that tells you God is moving behind the scenes. When God is about to pour out His glory, He doesn't announce it with noise. He whispers it into the hearts of those who have been faithful in the silence. The weight of His glory comes not to decorate your life, but to redefine it. It's not about what you lost, who left, or what failed. It's about what's coming that will make sense of it all. You see, glory doesn't come cheaply. It visits those who have walked through the fire and refused to bow. It rests upon those who didn't curse God in the storm, but trusted Him even when nothing made sense. The heaviness you feel isn't always punishment. It's preparation. God's glory is not a light breeze. It's a divine weight that settles upon those who have been crushed, those who have been refined, and those who refused to give up. You are not being overlooked. You are being positioned. What you thought was the end of your story is about to become the place where God writes His greatest chapter. When God pours out His glory, it doesn't just change situations, it transforms identities. You won't look like what you've been through. People who once pitied you will witness your transformation and realize that your delay was divine design. The pain you carried, the tears you cried, the nights you prayed for answers, they all become the soil where His glory takes root. Every hidden season was a setup for a visible manifestation. God allowed you to be misunderstood, not because He wanted you small, but because He was preparing you to stand in something greater than yourself. You've been walking through a season where everything felt stripped away. Doors closed, people disappeared, opportunities vanished, and yet your faith survived. That is not coincidence, that's evidence. God doesn't waste faith. When you kept believing, with nothing left to hold on to, heaven took notice. Every tear that fell in the darkness was counted, every prayer whispered in pain was heard. And now, that faith is about to be rewarded in a way that no human hand can explain. His glory will come so powerfully that you won't need to defend yourself, prove yourself, or explain how you made it. The glory itself will speak for you. You see, God's glory is not like human recognition. It doesn't just elevate, it transforms. When His glory shows up, shame dissolves, guilt disappears, and what was broken becomes beautiful. The people who once mocked your struggle will stand in awe of your strength, not realizing it wasn't your strength, it was His glory carrying you through. There will be moments when you look around and realize that what was once a burden has become a blessing. The very places where you were rejected will become the stages where you are celebrated. God's glory reverses everything that was meant to destroy you. When God pours out glory, it realigns your story. You will notice that the same places that broke you will no longer hold power over you. The memories that once haunted you will become testimonies of grace. The silence that felt endless will turn into the sound of breakthrough. The people who turned their backs on you will be unable to comprehend the new level God raises you to. That's what divine glory does. It takes the impossible and makes it undeniable. It brings such favor, such peace, such renewal that even your enemies must admit that it was the hand of God. Don't be surprised if you start feeling isolated right before the breakthrough. God often separates before He showcases. You may wonder why everything seems still, why your prayers seem unanswered, why your path feels lonely. But that's how heaven prepares the ground. Before the rain of glory falls, God ensures that every false support is removed, so that when His blessing comes, no one else can take credit for it. It will be undeniable that it was God alone who turned it all around. This next season will not look like your past. The same God who allowed you to be hidden will now reveal you with purpose. His glory will not just change how others see you, it will change how you see yourself. You will begin to walk differently, speak differently, think differently. The heaviness of defeat will be replaced with the weight of divine favor. You will no longer carry your pain as evidence of suffering, but as proof of survival. You will understand that the waiting was not wasted, it was sacred. So if your life feels uncertain right now, remember this: God is not silent. He is strategic. Every delay was divine timing. Every heartbreak was a redirection. Every loss was making room for what's coming. When His glory pours out, it will not come in pieces. It will come in fullness. The blessings will flow so abundantly that you'll have no choice but to acknowledge His hand in every part of your story. What once looked like ruin will become the canvas for His masterpiece. The same people who once said, "You'll never recover," will stand back and say, "Only God could have done this." Because when He pours out His glory, it doesn't just bless, it redefines. It writes over every lie, every loss, every label. The story that once brought you pain will soon bring you praise. This is not the end of your story. It's the unveiling of His glory. When God's glory is about to be revealed in your life, it doesn't arrive suddenly or without reason. It comes after a long and often painful process of preparation, one that happens in silence, far away from applause or recognition. God's glory has weight, and only those who have been strengthened in secret can carry it. That's why He hides you before He reveals you. Many mistake this hidden season for abandonment, but it is actually divine preservation. May the delay you feel, the silence you experience, and the stillness that surrounds you are not signs that God has forgotten you. They are evidence that He is getting you ready for something far greater than what you can presently handle. Think about it. When gold is refined, it's not displayed, it's placed in fire. The flames strip away impurities that the naked eye can't see, preparing it to shine. The same is true with your soul. God has placed you in seasons of refining, so that when His glory comes, it won't crush you, it will complete you. There are things He must remove: old habits, toxic attachments, pride, fear, dependency, because His glory cannot coexist with what weakens your foundation. You may have prayed for elevation, but God first ensures your roots are deep enough to sustain what He's about to build on top of you. This is why hidden seasons feel heavy. You can't explain what's happening inside you. Doors that should open stay closed. People who once supported you fade away. Opportunities you thought were certain slip through your fingers. But here's the truth. He's not punishing you. He's protecting you from premature exposure. If glory comes too soon, it destroys. God loves you too much to let you rise before you're ready. Every no you've received was an act of mercy disguised as disappointment. Every moment of delay was grace in motion. In hiddenness, you learn what public success can never teach you: dependence on God. It's in isolation that faith becomes real. When the applause fades and the audience disappears, you discover whether your relationship with God was built on emotion or conviction. You learn to trust His voice above the noise, to find peace in His presence, and to draw strength from His word. This is sacred ground, where hearts are shaped, minds are renewed, and faith becomes unshakable. Sometimes God hides you not to keep you small, but to enlarge your capacity. He's building endurance inside you, developing your ability to carry what's coming. If He showed you the full picture now, it would overwhelm you. The glory He's preparing to pour out isn't ordinary. It's heavy. It will attract attention, responsibility, and spiritual weight. And to handle that, you must be trained in humility, patience, and spiritual discipline. That's why he teaches you in the dark what you'll need to display in the light. You may not see it now, but every silent season is divine rehearsal. God is orchestrating moments where your character is tested and your faith stretched. Each trial is shaping you into someone capable of handling favor without losing focus. The waiting period becomes a classroom where you learn divine timing, obedience, and discernment. You start to realize that hidden seasons are not wasted. They're the birthplace of destiny. Look at the pattern throughout Scripture. Before David wore the crown, he was hidden with sheep. Before Joseph ruled Egypt, he was hidden in a prison. Before Moses led a nation, he was hidden in the desert. Before Jesus began his ministry, he was hidden in Nazareth. Each of them endured obscurity, rejection, and silence, but in that hiddenness, they developed the strength to handle glory. You are no different. The same God who prepared them in secret is preparing you right now. So when it feels like life has paused, don't panic. When prayers seem unanswered, don't despair. God's silence isn't absence, it's strategy. He's working on you privately so that when His glory is revealed, no one will question who sustained you through it all. People may see your elevation later, but they'll never understand the process that preceded it. That's the beauty of God's timing. It ensures that glory doesn't destroy what grace built. The next time you feel overlooked or hidden, remember, a seed is never wasted when buried. It's hidden for a purpose, to grow roots before it rises. And just like that seed, you are in a divine season of preparation. What feels like burial is actually planting. When the time comes, you will emerge not fragile, but fortified, not empty, but equipped. And when His glory finally pours out, it will not only change your story, it will prove that the silence was sacred and the hiding was holy. Every ounce of pain you've endured has been serving a higher purpose. It may not have felt like it at the time, but God was never punishing you, He was shaping you. Pain has always been one of His greatest tools for preparation. When life breaks you open, when it strips away comfort, when it leaves you questioning everything, that is often the exact moment God begins to mold your heart for something greater. Your pain was never wasted. It was the path that led you to purpose. Without those valleys, you would not have developed the strength, the empathy, or the faith that you now carry within you. Sometimes God allows pain not because He enjoys watching His children suffer, but because He knows what that pain will produce. You can't carry glory without first learning endurance. You can't walk in divine purpose until you've learned to trust divine timing. Every betrayal, every disappointment, every sleepless night was chiseling away parts of you that couldn't go where He's taking you. Pain doesn't always destroy. It refines. It reveals what's real. It shows you who you are when everything else is stripped away. It exposes what's weak so that God can strengthen it, and it silences what's unnecessary so that His voice becomes clear again. The path to purpose is rarely straight. It winds through heartbreak, confusion, and loss. It takes you through situations that make you question if God is still near. But those moments, as dark as they seem, are where spiritual depth is born. You learn compassion because you've been broken. You learn strength because you've been tested. You learn discernment because you've seen deception. And through it all, your faith transforms from something you talk about to something you live by. Pain became your teacher, and purpose became its lesson. Think back to the moments when you thought you couldn't go on, when the weight was unbearable, when the prayers felt unanswered, when the silence of heaven echoed louder than your cries. Those were not wasted nights. They were sacred encounters. God was close even when you couldn't feel Him. The same fire that burned your plans was purifying your purpose. You were being prepared to carry a glory far heavier than your current strength could hold. Pain stretched you, carved room inside you, and made space for something divine to dwell. You see, purpose doesn't come wrapped in comfort. It comes disguised as chaos. When everything fell apart, it was actually falling into place. The very pain that you begged God to remove was the same pain that pushed you into your destiny. If Joseph had not been betrayed by his brothers, he would have never reached the palace. If David had not been chased by Saul, he would have never learned the courage to lead a nation. If Jesus had not faced the cross, the resurrection would never have come. Pain precedes purpose. It's heaven's process. The reason your pain felt so personal is because your purpose is so powerful. God tailored your trials to fit the calling on your life. The moments that hurt you the most were not random. They were strategic. Every loss trained you in humility. Every heartbreak trained you in compassion. Every rejection trained you in resilience. Now, when God pours out His glory, you'll know how to handle it, not with pride, but with gratitude. You'll understand that what others call strength is simply the grace that was born through suffering. Many people pray for purpose but resist the pain that births it. Yet the truth is you cannot skip the process. You cannot have oil without olives being crushed. You cannot have wine without grapes being pressed. You cannot have glory without a cross. God used your seasons of pain to prepare you for your seasons of promise. The tears you shed watered the ground of your next breakthrough. The heartbreak you survived opened your heart for deeper love. The confusion you walked through gave you wisdom you never had before. And now, standing on the other side of it, you can look back and see that pain was never your enemy. It was your instructor. It taught you patience, perseverance, and purpose. It taught you how to hear God when no one else understood. It stripped away everything fake and left only what was real. That's why when God pours out His glory now, it won't feel unfamiliar. It will feel like home, because you've already carried the weight of suffering, and now you're ready to carry the weight of glory. Your story is not defined by the wounds, it's defined by the healing that followed. Pain may have broken you, but it also built you. It humbled you, purified you, and made you ready for divine responsibility. And soon the world will see that every scar you carry is not a mark of defeat, it's a sign of transformation. What once made you weep will one day make you worship. What once hurt you will soon reveal why God allowed it. Your pain was the path to your purpose, and now your purpose will give meaning to every pain you've ever endured. Faith doesn't shine brightest when everything is going well. It shines in the dark, when you are surrounded by silence, when prayers felt unanswered, when it seemed like nothing was moving. That's when your faith spoke the loudest in heaven. You may not have realized it, but every time you whispered, "God, I still trust you," when everything in you wanted to quit, you were building spiritual history with Him. Faith in the dark carries a fragrance that reaches the throne of God. It's the kind of faith that can't be faked or borrowed. It's forged in fire, born from the ashes of your own broken expectations. When everything around you is collapsing, when hope seemed gone, and you still chose to believe, heaven took notice. God is drawn to faith like that, the kind that doesn't demand proof before it trusts, the kind that doesn't need comfort before it obeys, the kind that stands still when everything screams to run. That's the faith that catches the attention of God Himself. He doesn't forget the nights you prayed through tears. He doesn't overlook the moments when you chose to forgive instead of retaliate. He saw you staying faithful when it would have been easier to walk away. Every silent yes to God has been recorded, and now the time is coming when that hidden faith will be rewarded in the open. Faith in the dark is a mystery. It's walking with no map, trusting that God knows the way. It's believing that light still exists even when all you can see is shadow. You didn't just survive those dark seasons. You were proving the depth of your belief. Faith isn't proven in comfort, it's proven in contradiction. When everything you saw contradicted what God promised, and you still believed, that's when your spirit grew wings. You learned that faith is not a feeling, it's a choice. It's deciding to believe God's word when your emotions scream otherwise. It's choosing to see promise where others see impossibility. The truth is, the faith that develops in darkness carries a different kind of power. It's not fragile, it's unbreakable. Because once you've trusted God in silence, no noise can ever shake you again. Once you've seen him move when there was no hope left, you stop panicking over temporary storms. You start recognizing that the same God who sustained you then will sustain you now. That kind of faith is what sets you apart. It's what makes you unshakable when others fall apart. Abandoning the faith is what sets you apart. It's what makes you unshakable when others fall apart. Do you remember the times when you questioned if God had forgotten you? Those were the times he was testing your trust. When you felt unseen, he was watching closer than ever. When you felt unheard, he was collecting every word you spoke in prayer. When you felt weak, he was strengthening your foundation. Faith grows quietly. It rarely announces itself. Like roots underground, it deepens in hidden soil until it can support the weight of a tree full of fruit. Your unseen faith has been growing for years, and now God is about to bring it into view. The faith that kept you through the valley is the same faith that will lift you to the mountain. You didn't lose it. It multiplied in silence. You've proven that your devotion to God isn't dependent on blessings but on relationship. That's rare. Many worship when things are good, but few still worship when nothing makes sense. You did, and that kind of faith moves heaven. You may not have heard applause on earth, but there was celebration in heaven every time you chose trust over fear, prayer over panic, surrender over control. Now God is about to make that private faith public. What you believed in secret is about to manifest openly. Those who doubted your endurance will see that it wasn't luck, it was loyalty. The blessings that are coming your way aren't rewards of effort, they're acknowledgments of faith. God honors faith that refuses to die in the dark. You may have been walking blind, but your steps were guided by divine light, and now that light is about to break through in your life. Like dawn after a long night. Every season of uncertainty was God building your spiritual muscles. Every unanswered prayer was forming deeper trust. You learned that sometimes God delays, not to deny, but to strengthen your belief. You stopped needing signs to trust him and began trusting him as the sign. That's maturity. That's the kind of faith that moves mountains, not because of how loud it shouts, but because of how deeply it stands. So when you see the blessings begin to unfold, remember, they're not random. They're the visible evidence of your invisible faith. Heaven noticed what earth ignored. God saw what others dismissed. Every tear, every prayer, every moment you chose faith over fear has been written in his book. And now he's ready to turn that faith into fulfillment. Your faith in the dark didn't just survive, it changed the course of your destiny. And now heaven is about to show the world what it saw in you all along. When God's glory falls upon your life, it doesn't simply improve what's around you. It transforms who you are. It reaches into the deepest parts of your identity and rewrites the story you've been telling yourself for years. His glory doesn't just visit your situation, it reconstructs your soul. The moment his presence fills your life, you stop identifying with your pain, your past, and your failures. You begin to see yourself not as the world defined you, but as heaven designed you. What once looked like weakness becomes strength. What once seemed like defeat becomes divine setup. God's glory changes everything about how you see yourself. For too long, life may have convinced you that you are what happened to you. You may have been defined by heartbreak, rejection, loss, or failure. You may have carried the labels that others placed on you. Not enough, forgotten, unworthy. But when the glory of God touches you, those labels lose their power. His presence exposes every lie you've believed and replaces it with truth. You begin to see through His eyes, not the distorted lens of your past, where others saw damage. He sees destiny. Where you saw shame, He sees purpose, and in that revelation you are redefined. God's glory carries healing that no human word can offer. It touches wounds you never spoke about. It restores parts of your heart that you thought were beyond repair. When His presence fills you, your broken identity is no longer your home. You stop living from your pain and start living from His promise. That's what true transformation looks like. It's not about pretending everything is fine. It's about being so filled with divine peace that your scars no longer define you. The same hands that allowed your breaking are now shaping you for blessing. There's something holy about this kind of transformation. It's not loud. It's not rushed. God works deeply, quietly, until one day you wake up and realize that the things that once controlled you no longer hold power. The bitterness, the fear, the guilt. They begin to dissolve under the light of His glory. You find yourself walking differently, speaking differently, thinking differently. You start carrying yourself with the awareness that you are loved, chosen, and covered. That's not arrogance. That's identity. When you know who you are in God, you no longer chase validation from people. His glory establishes what approval could never secure. Sometimes, the reason God allows us to lose everything is so we can finally find ourselves in Him. You may have gone through seasons where your reputation was attacked, your confidence shattered, or your worth questioned. But what was really happening was divine redirection. God was stripping away false identities that were never yours to carry. When the world walked away, He was drawing you closer. When you had nothing left to prove, He began to reveal your true worth. That's the power of His glory. It uncovers the masterpiece beneath the mess. When His glory fills your life, even your weaknesses become testimonies. The things that once embarrassed you become the very evidence of His grace. People will look at you and see change, but they won't understand the process that brought you there. They'll think you healed overnight, but you'll know it was years of quiet transformation. Glory doesn't make you perfect, it makes you whole. It brings balance, clarity, and restoration to places that life left shattered. There's also a deep peace that comes with being redefined by God. You stop competing. You stop comparing. You no longer measure your worth by what others think. You begin to walk in stillness, knowing that your identity is anchored in something eternal. That's what happens when His glory rests on you. It gives you confidence without pride, humility without fear, and strength without hardness. You stop trying to fix yourself because you realize He already has. And as you carry this renewed identity, people will notice something different about you. They'll see a calmness in your spirit, a strength in your eyes, and a peace in your presence. That's not personality. That's glory. It's what happens when God's presence becomes your reflection. The more time you spend in His light, the more you start to look like Him. You stop reacting to chaos the same way. You stop letting the world dictate your value. You begin to understand that your past may explain you, but it does not define you. God's glory doesn't just lift you, it anchors you. It gives you a sense of belonging that no relationship, achievement, or title could ever offer. You'll begin to realize that everything you once lost was making room for who you were always meant to be. You were never defined by the pain. You were being refined for purpose. And now, when you step forward, it's not as the broken version of who you were. It's as the redeemed version of who He's made you. This is what it means to be redefined by glory, to walk through fire and come out radiant, to lose yourself and find God, to have every false identity burned away until only truth remains. The glory of God doesn't just change your circumstances, it changes your story by changing you first. And when that transformation is complete, your very life becomes a testimony that the glory of God is real, powerful, and personal. The most remarkable thing about God's glory is that it turns pain into proof. The very things that were meant to destroy you become the undeniable evidence that God's hand has always been on your life. What others saw as your downfall, God saw as the foundation for His display of power. You see, He doesn't waste suffering. Every wound, every betrayal, every loss was a seed that heaven planted for a greater harvest of glory. The enemy wanted those moments to bury you, but God used them to build you. And soon, when people look at you, they won't see your scars as reminders of defeat. They'll see them as signs of divine victory. Sometimes God allows the enemy to strike, not to break you, but to reveal His own strength in you. When everything fell apart, when it seemed like there was no way forward, that's when God began crafting a comeback so extraordinary that no one will be able to deny His involvement. He could have stopped the storm, but He chose instead to strengthen you through it. Because when the story is told, the glory must belong to Him alone. Every valley was meant to become a stage for His power. Every tear you cried watered the soil of your future testimony. What was meant for evil has always been part of God's design for good. Remember Joseph, betrayed, sold, imprisoned, forgotten. Every injustice he faced looked like a dead end, but in the end it was the divine route to his destiny. The same hands that hurt him unknowingly pushed him toward the throne. That's how God works. He takes betrayal and turns it into promotion. He turns rejection into redirection. He transforms wounds into weapons. What was meant to destroy you becomes the very thing that lifts you. Your story, no matter how painful, is the evidence that grace always wins. When you were betrayed, when people lied about you, when everything seemed to crumble, you thought it was over. But God was still writing. You didn't realize that your suffering was actually the ink of His masterpiece. He let people walk away so that when His glory arrives, no one else can take credit for it. He allowed the hurt because it humbled you, grounded you, and kept you dependent on Him. You didn't lose, you were being prepared. Every failure was training you for faith. Every disappointment was sharpening your discernment. Every heartbreak was clearing space for His healing hand to move. The beauty of divine power is that it doesn't just fix situations, it reverses them. God doesn't only restore what was stolen, He multiplies it. When His glory shows up, it doesn't just heal the wound, it redeems the story. You begin to see that the greatest losses were actually the greatest lessons. The betrayals that broke your heart were blessings in disguise, removing people who couldn't go where you're going. The setbacks that frustrated you were actually divine pauses, allowing your character to mature before your promotion arrived. And when God's glory finally pours out, the transformation will be so visible that even those who doubted you will have to admit that it was God. They'll remember how far you fell, and they'll see how high you've risen. They'll recall how broken you were, and they'll marvel at how whole you've become. The same mouths that mocked you will be silenced by the evidence of His favor. That's the power of divine reversal. It doesn't require revenge. It requires patience, because when God lifts you, no one can deny it. Think about the butterfly. Before beauty, it must endure confinement. The cocoon looks like a tomb, but it's actually a transformation chamber. Your pain has been that cocoon. You were being reshaped for flight while everyone thought you were finished. And now you're about to emerge with wings that can carry you farther than you ever imagined. That's how God works. He lets the world think you're buried, when in fact you're being born anew. You may have wondered why God didn't protect you from the pain. But He never promised to shield you from the storm. He promised to bring you through it. If He had stopped every betrayal, every loss, every heartbreak, you would never have discovered how strong His grace really is. You would have never known that He is a restorer, a redeemer, a healer of the broken-hearted. Now every painful chapter you survived becomes a sermon. You can look back and say, "It hurt, but it didn't destroy me. It broke me, but it also built me." So when God pours out His glory, it won't erase your past. It will redeem it. Every scar will shine with purpose. Every valley will echo with victory. Every moment of despair will become proof that His power is greater than any pain you've faced. You will realize that what was meant to destroy you only revealed the depth of His protection. What was meant to silence you only amplified His voice in your life. The darkness you walked through became the backdrop for His light to shine even brighter. And when people ask how you made it, you'll simply smile and say, "It was God," because no explanation will ever make sense without Him. You'll know that the only reason you're standing is because His glory took what was broken and turned it into beauty. What was meant to destroy you has become the greatest proof of His power, and that will be the story that redefines your life forever. Before God pours out His glory, He often takes you through a season of separation. A quiet, unsettling space where familiar things begin to fall away. The people you thought would walk with you suddenly drift apart. The doors you depended on close without explanation. Even your own desires begin to change. It can feel like loss, like rejection, like the ground beneath your feet is shifting. But in truth, it's divine separation. God is not punishing you. He's positioning you. Every person, every place, every habit being removed from your life is making room for the weight of the glory that's about to rest on you. This kind of separation hurts because it challenges your attachment to comfort. You begin to question why things had to end, why people had to leave, why the support you counted on suddenly disappeared. But hidden within that silence is strategy. God removes distractions not because they are evil, but because they can't go where He's taking you. There are people who were perfect for your past, but poisonous for your future. There are connections that once served your growth, but now hinder your purpose. So He disconnects you, even when your heart still wants to hold on. That's how divine separation works. It doesn't ask for your permission. It demands your trust. You might not realize it yet, but this isolation is sacred. It's in separation that God downloads revelation. When you no longer have the noise of others shaping your identity, you begin to hear His voice with clarity. That's when you start to see who you truly are. You begin to understand what He's been trying to show you all along, that you were never meant to depend on people for validation or direction. The silence becomes holy ground. The loneliness becomes the classroom where God teaches you how to walk with Him without the need for applause or approval. Look through Scripture and you'll find the pattern. Before God used anyone mightily, He separated them. Abraham was called to leave his homeland and family. Joseph was isolated in prison. Moses spent 40 years in the desert. David hid in caves before the crown. Even Jesus withdrew to the wilderness before his ministry began. Separation always comes before revelation. It's the spiritual process that prepares the vessel before the God will not pour his glory into a heart that's still crowded with distractions and attachments that compete for his place. It's easy to mistake this season for abandonment, but it's actually the deepest form of love. God removes what you think you need so you can discover that all you ever needed was him. He takes away temporary anchors so you can root yourself in eternal truth. The things that once gave you identity, titles, relationships, recognition, begin to lose their grip. And though it feels uncomfortable, it's in this stripping away that your soul becomes free. Free from comparison, free from dependence, free from the weight of expectations. Only then can you carry glory without breaking under it. There's a sacred strength that comes from standing alone with God. You start to realize that isolation isn't empty, it's full of divine presence. The same God who seemed silent was actually closer than ever. He wasn't ignoring you, he was insulating you. You were surrounded by his protection while he refined your purpose. You didn't lose those people or opportunities by accident. They were released because they were too small for what's next. When God wants to multiply you, he first subtracts what cannot sustain your expansion. During this period of divine separation, your prayers begin to shift. You stop asking God to bring people back and start thanking him for who stayed. You stop crying over what ended and start recognizing what's beginning. The pain of isolation slowly turns into peace because you begin to understand that God's pruning is proof of his plans. He doesn't prune what he's done with. He prunes what he's about to use. Every time something is removed, it's a sign that something greater is on the way. You may have thought you were forgotten, but heaven has been watching your response. God was testing whether you could stay faithful without an audience. He wanted to see if you would still worship when no one noticed, still pray when no one clapped, still believe when no one encouraged you. And because you did, you've passed a test few ever do. You've shown that your devotion is genuine. Now that you've been purified through isolation, you're ready for elevation. When the glory finally comes, it will be clear why God separated you. The same people who left will have to watch as he lifts you. The same situations that broke you will become the backdrop for your breakthrough. Divine separation always leads to divine revelation, and revelation always precedes manifestation. You will look back and realize that every goodbye was grace, every closed door was protection, and every lonely night was holy preparation. God removed what could have limited you so that his glory could fill you completely, and when it does, you'll understand that isolation was never rejection. It was sacred refinement for a destiny only you could carry. When God begins to move, there's a point where your words, your explanations, and your efforts become unnecessary, because his glory speaks louder than anything you could ever say. There comes a time when what God does for you will silence every rumor, every critic, every lie. You won't have to defend yourself, justify your past, or convince anyone of your worth. The transformation will be undeniable. His presence will radiate through your life so strongly that even those who once doubted you will have to admit God's hand is upon them. That's the power of divine glory. It doesn't argue, it demonstrates. You see, there are seasons when you tried to explain yourself, when you wanted people to understand your heart, your pain, your intentions. But no matter what you said, they didn't get it. They misjudged you, misquoted you, and misunderstood you. You cried out for validation, for someone to see your truth, but God stayed silent. And now you understand why. Because he didn't want your defense. He wanted your faith. He knew the day would come when your life itself would be your response. The blessing He's preparing will speak louder than your words ever could. The favor coming your way will be your vindication. When God's glory rests upon someone, it can't be hidden. It shows up in the way they walk, the way they speak, the way peace follows them even in chaos. People may not know your story, but they'll sense something different about you. That's what happens when you've walked through fire and come out refined. You carry an atmosphere that testifies without sound. The light of God's glory makes explanations unnecessary. It becomes the evidence of your transformation. There will be people who once doubted your calling but will now seek your wisdom. There will be those who once gossiped about you who will have no choice but to respect you. That's not pride. That's prophecy. God promised that He would prepare a table for you in the presence of your enemies, not behind their backs. Why? Because He wants them to see what His favor looks like when it falls. Your story will be the sermon. Your survival will be the sign. What once looked like your ruin will now become your revelation. The most powerful testimony isn't spoken. It's lived. When God moves in your life, your peace will be louder than your pain. Your elevation will speak louder than your explanations. The same people who questioned how you would make it will watch you stand in blessings they can't comprehend. That's what happens when divine glory takes over. It rearranges the narrative. Every whisper of doubt becomes irrelevant because the evidence is overwhelming. The doors that open, the opportunities that unfold, the joy that fills your spirit. These things can't be fabricated. Only God can author that kind of turnaround. Even your enemies will have to acknowledge the transformation. They won't understand how you survived what should have destroyed you. They'll look for logic in a life carried by grace. But that's the beauty of God's glory. It defies logic. It makes no sense to human reasoning because it's not man-made. It's heaven-sent. You'll realize that vindication doesn't come from proving people wrong. It comes from letting God make things right. The justice of heaven doesn't shout, it shines. And when this happens, humility will anchor you. You won't need to gloat. You won't need to boast. You'll simply know. You'll recognize that every miracle, every blessing, every breakthrough was not because of who you are, but because of who He is. You'll carry a quiet confidence that can't be shaken. You won't argue with those who doubt your journey. You'll simply let the fruit of your faith speak for itself. The peace on your face will be proof of His presence. The favor in your life will be evidence of His promise. The way you've changed will be testimony enough. Remember, when God's glory speaks, no human voice can silence it. You don't have to make announcements or prove your worth. The glory will announce you. The transformation will tell your story. The breakthrough will confirm your calling. The restoration will silence the critics. God Himself will be your defense. Those who misunderstood you will see clearly, and those who disrespected you will regret it. Not because you seek revenge, but because the power of God's presence will convict their hearts. This is how God moves. He replaces your need to speak with His need to show. He replaces your efforts to prove with His evidence of power. When His glory descends, even the hardest hearts soften, and the loudest mouths go quiet. And in that holy silence, your life will stand as living proof that God honors the faithful, restores the broken, and exalts those who waited on Him. You won't have to explain your story anymore. The glory will tell it for you. When God pours out His glory, it doesn't come as a whisper. It comes as a transformation, so deep that your life becomes the living proof of His power. Everything you lost, everything that broke you, every tear you thought went unnoticed, He gathers it all and turns it into purpose. You won't even recognize the person you were before his hand touched your story. The shame, the fear, the confusion, they will fade beneath the radiance of his presence. And as his glory settles upon you, it will redefine how others see you, how you see yourself, and how you see God. This is not just a new chapter, it's a divine rewrite. God isn't restoring you to where you were. He's elevating you to where you were always meant to be. The pain that once spoke so loudly will fall silent under the sound of his victory in your life. Every trial will reveal why it had to happen. Every delay will make sense, and every unanswered prayer will be seen as protection. You'll stand in awe, realizing that the glory that once seemed distant has now become your reality. So walk boldly into this new season. You don't need to explain yourself, chase validation, or fear the unknown. God is about to make your story his masterpiece. The glory that's coming will not only heal what was broken, it will reveal who you truly are in him. And when that happens, you will finally understand. Every hidden season, every tear, every lonely night was worth it, because now the weight of his glory rests upon you, and nothing will ever be the same again.